What would you do if the life you built, brick by brick with your bare hands, was handed to someone else like it was never yours to begin with? Would you scream? Would you fall to your knees and beg the world to remember? Or would you stay silent, watching it all unfold like a cruel joke you never signed up for? This story isn't just about betrayal. It's about what happens after the betrayal. About the moment when you think you've lost everything, only to discover that life, in its own twisted poetry, had something greater in store. Her name is Elena, a woman whose kindness was mistaken for weakness, whose silence was interpreted as insignificance. She wasn't loud, but she was present. She didn't shine for attention, but she glowed from within. And yet, in a single breath, she was replaced, forgotten like a story too quiet to be remembered. It started with a celebration she wasn't invited to. The project she had poured her soul into, working late nights, skipping meals, bleeding her heart onto paper, was being credited to someone else. Not just anyone. Rachel, a woman who once leaned on Elena for help, advice, and guidance. And now, Rachel was standing under the spotlight Elena lit for her. As the applause echoed through the hall that night, Elena stood outside in the cold, her phone buzzing with photos she wasn't tagged in and moments she wasn't a part of. They forgot her. Not just her name. They forgot her effort, her heart, her story. It wasn't just about the job. It was about everything it represented. Years of trying to be the good one, the humble one, the team player. Years of believing that hard work would be enough. That staying true to yourself mattered. That love and loyalty would eventually be seen and valued. But she was wrong. And that realization didn't come with fireworks. It came with silence. Deafening, soul-piercing silence. She walked home that night with a weight that words could never describe. Her heels clicking against the empty sidewalk. Her eyes reflecting the streetlights like shattered glass. She didn't cry. Not yet. There was something numb about betrayal. Something cold. It freezes your tears before they even form. When she reached her apartment, the city outside continued living, laughing, moving. And Elena? She sat on the edge of her bed, staring into the dark, wondering if maybe, just maybe, this was her story ending. A soft fade out. Forgotten. But the universe wasn't done with her. Something unexpected was already in motion. Something not even Rachel, nor the crowd cheering for her, could have seen coming. A ripple had begun. One decision. One overlooked act. One hidden truth waiting to resurface. Because what no one realized was this. The foundation Rachel was standing on was cracking. And Elena? She was about to rise in a way that made the world stop and stare. Elena wasn't born into comfort. Her life had always been a quiet blend of struggle and solitude, but she never allowed herself to be defined by her hardships. Raised by a single mother in a small apartment tucked above a bakery, Elena learned early that life wouldn't offer her shortcuts. What she didn't have in privilege, she made up for in persistence. She was the type of girl who stayed late after class, not because she was slow but because she wanted to be sure. The type of woman who would work twice as hard to earn half the recognition and still offer her seat to someone else if they looked more tired than she felt. Her childhood was a series of lessons taught without words. Watching her mother stitch clothes late into the night. Observing neighbors whisper about dreams they could never afford to chase. Elena, even as a young girl, knew she wanted more. Not just for herself, but for her mother. For the legacy of quiet women who came before her and never got a page in anyone's book. She was a creator, a thinker, a dreamer who stayed grounded. When she got into design school, she didn't have the right connections, the fancy clothes, or the rich parents. But what she had was a vision, one that turned blank spaces into beauty. She poured her heart into every project, treating each piece like it could change someone's life. And it often did. Her professors noticed her. Her classmates admired her. Even when she wasn't loud or flashy, there was something magnetic about Elena. Something pure. That's when she met Rachel. Rachel was everything Elena wasn't, on the surface. Bold, charming, socially fluent. The kind of woman who knew how to walk into a room and get noticed within seconds. Where Elena built things with care, Rachel knew how to present them with flair. They became friends, at least on paper. Rachel leaned on Elena for creative support, constantly asking for help with projects, ideas, or concepts she couldn't quite grasp. Elena, believing in kindness, always said yes. She shared her thoughts, sketched out pieces, fixed Rachel's errors in the background. To Rachel's face, she was a friend. Behind her back, she was a silent architect. At first, it didn't matter. Elena thought, we're growing together. One day, she'll do the same for me. But that day never came. Instead, Elena started noticing small things. Her phrases being repeated in meetings by Rachel. Her ideas being pitched with no credit. Her sketches slightly edited and showcased under Rachel's name. She told herself it was paranoia. She didn't want to seem bitter or petty. But then came the promotion pitch. The biggest campaign their agency had ever handled. Elena had built it for months. She gave her nights, her weekends, even her health. Every single detail had her essence carved into it. And then, when the time came to present, it wasn't her name on the slides. It was Rachel's. Rachel stood there in heels Elena once complimented, wearing a dress Elena helped her choose, presenting work Elena had bled for. And when the applause echoed across the room, Elena was in the back, forgotten like a footnote on the story she authored. Her chest tightened that day, not out of jealousy, but betrayal. Not because Rachel shined, but because she climbed with Elena's wings and didn't look back. At home, Elena began to question herself. Maybe she wasn't meant to lead. Maybe quiet people weren't meant for the spotlight. Maybe this was just how life worked. The loud got seen, the kind got sidelined. But deep inside her, a quiet ember still burned. She remembered something her mother once said. Just because they overlook your light doesn't mean it's not shining. Some people are just too blind to see brilliance without noise. Elena carried those words like armor. She started to retreat, not out of defeat, but reflection. She knew something had to change. She couldn't keep giving her heart to people who only knew how to take. So she distanced herself, observed more, spoke less. She started documenting everything, keeping records, saving sketches, timestamps, emails, not for revenge but for proof, for truth. She poured herself back into her work, but this time, quietly preparing, silently building, creating not for approval, but for integrity, for healing, for her. Because the girl who once wanted to be noticed was now focused on becoming undeniable. It started slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the cracks. Rachel's rise to recognition had been swift and dazzling. She was on every promotional banner, invited to exclusive panels, and even featured in an industry magazine as the visionary behind the campaign. Elena, meanwhile, watched from a distance. There was no confrontation, no accusation, just silence. But it was in that silence that Elena began to hear more than ever. Clients would make offhand comments. "This design feels different than your last one," they'd say to Rachel during meetings. Or, "Can you explain the concept behind this motif?" Rachel, usually confident, would fumble. She'd smile and change the topic, sometimes deflecting the question entirely. It was subtle, but Elena saw it. Others were beginning to notice, too. Still, she said nothing. Not when Rachel took credit for her color theory breakdown. Not when she passed off Elena's hand-drawn logos as her own. Not even when Rachel's name started appearing on projects Elena had never even shared with her. Elena was watching, documenting. Not to get even, but to prepare. Then came the first confrontation, but not from Elena. It was a junior designer, Sophie, who had recently joined the firm. She had been assigned to help Rachel with a new campaign, and she caught on quickly. One day, Sophie quietly approached Elena at the break room. "I hope this isn't inappropriate," she began, voice low. "But I just wanted to say—" "I know." Elena blinked. "Know what?" Sophie glanced around before continuing. "That Rachel's not the one making those designs. I've seen the original drafts. They have your name all over them, your style, your flow. I even saw your signature on one of the early concept boards." Elena smiled faintly. "Thank you for noticing. But I'm not trying to cause a scene." Sophie looked at her with something between admiration and frustration. Maybe you don't have to. Maybe the truth will cause one on its own. That conversation haunted Elena for days. Maybe, just maybe, she had stayed silent too long. Then something happened that shifted everything. A major international client, the same client behind the campaign Rachel had stolen, requested a live Q&A with the creative brain behind the designs. Naturally, Rachel agreed, eager to bask in more attention. But as the virtual event went live, it didn't take long for the tension to build. The clients asked specific questions, deep ones that only someone truly involved in the creation could answer. What was the inspiration behind the broken thread motif on slide 3? What does the overlapping pattern in the center represent? How did you achieve the symbolic symmetry across the layout? Rachel floundered. Her answers were vague, hesitant, contradictory. There was a noticeable shift in the audience's tone. Elena, who had tuned in quietly from her office, felt her heart pounding, not from excitement, but a strange, surreal sorrow. She wasn't enjoying this. She wasn't thrilled that Rachel was stumbling. She was heartbroken it had come to this. But it wasn't over yet. The next day, Elena received an anonymous email. No subject line, just a link. She clicked it. It led to an internal forum post, one that had gone semi-viral within their firm. A whistleblower, anonymous, though Elena had her guesses, had compiled screenshots of sketches, drafts, emails, and even time-stamped messages that all pointed to one truth. Elena was the original creator of everything Rachel had claimed. The post was titled, "The Real Mind Behind the Masterpiece." By lunchtime, it had spread through the entire office. Rachel was called into a private meeting. HR got involved. The creative director, who had previously turned a blind eye to everything, suddenly looked pale with concern. The air was thick with whispers. Some sympathetic, some skeptical, most shocked. But Elena? She stayed calm. She was summoned, too, of course. Asked to verify the evidence. Asked why she hadn't come forward sooner. "I didn't want to destroy anyone," she said simply. "I just wanted to be seen." And now she was. But the story didn't stop there. Rachel, desperate to salvage her reputation, tried one last move. She invited Elena to a rooftop conversation, just the two of them. A final plea. Or a confrontation. Elena agreed. The sky was painted in gold and pink when they met. Sunset reflecting across the city skyline like a mirror of what had been lost and what might be reborn. Rachel's eyes were tired. There was no defiance in her voice now. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," she said. "You didn't mean to betray me?" Elena asked, not bitter, just curious. I just thought no one would notice. And when they did, it was too late to undo it. Everything just spiraled. Elena looked at her, studying her like she once studied designs, searching for meaning behind the chaos. "I helped you because I believed in your potential," she said. "But somewhere along the way, you stopped believing in mine." Rachel looked away, tears forming. "I was afraid you'd get the spotlight, and I'd fade." Elena nodded slowly. "So you made me fade instead." Silence. Then Rachel whispered, "I'm sorry." Elena exhaled, the breeze soft around her. "I accept your apology, but I won't carry the weight of your choices anymore." That was the real shift. Not the exposure, not the apology, but Elena reclaiming her power, not with vengeance, but with truth. From that day on, things began to realign. The agency offered Elena the lead position on an upcoming campaign. Clients requested her by name. A few media platforms reached out, curious to hear her story, not just the scandal, but the resilience. And Rachel? She resigned quietly a week later. No dramatic exit. No vindictive goodbye. Just silence. The kind of silence Elena once feared now became her peace. Because she had learned something powerful. Being forgotten doesn't mean you've failed. Sometimes, the world forgets so you can remember who you are, without the noise, without the shadows, without needing to share your light with someone who never truly valued it. Elena walked into the office the following Monday, not with pride, but with a deeper sense of presence. She had never felt like this before, not even in her most ambitious moments. This wasn't about being applauded, noticed, or finally given what she deserved. No, it was about something quieter, far more sacred. Self-restoration. After everything had unfolded, the whispers began to fade. Some people tried to act as though nothing had happened, while others looked at her with a strange new respect, as if seeing her for the first time. Elena didn't seek revenge, didn't demand apologies from others who stayed silent during her mistreatment. She simply carried on, with quiet strength and calm authority. One afternoon, a senior executive named Marcus, who had always remained distant before, knocked gently on her door. "Do you have a moment?" She nodded. He stepped inside, holding a folder. "We'd like you to lead our international creative team for the Zurich campaign. We saw how you handled everything, the work, the pressure, the fallout. And, honestly, we were blind not to see your talent sooner." Elena took the file in her hands and looked up at him. "Thank you." "Also," Marcus hesitated, "we were wondering if you'd be willing to do a talk, maybe at the next leadership summit, on authenticity, creativity, and resilience." That word again. Resilience. She had lived it, worn it, breathed it in, so much so that it had become part of her skin. "I'll think about it," she said. He smiled and left, but that day, something shifted again inside her. That night, Elena walked home with the folder in her hand and the sky glowing above her. For once, it didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. All of it. The pain, the silence, the sacrifice. It hadn't been for nothing. A week later, she flew out for the Zurich campaign. Her team there was young, creative, hungry. They welcomed her with open arms and genuine excitement, not just because of her reputation, but because of her energy. She was the kind of leader who listened, who asked questions, who guided with intention, not ego. On the third day, one of the interns, a shy girl named Lena, asked Elena privately, "How did you not give up when someone else took credit for your work?" Elena paused. She sat down beside the girl and said, "Because giving up would have meant they were right about me. And I couldn't live in that lie. I had to be the one who told my story, not someone who let it be written by someone else's insecurity." Lena smiled, and for a moment, Elena saw herself in that young girl. The same fire, the same quiet longing to be seen. Zurich was a success. A massive one. The campaign received record engagement. The client praised her leadership, and her agency back home requested she speak at the company-wide retreat. This time, she said yes. She stood on the stage weeks later, in front of hundreds of employees, and looked out into the audience. There was no Rachel anymore. But that wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that Elena was still here. She took a deep breath and began. "I used to think silence was safety," she said. "That if I just worked hard enough, kept my head down, and trusted people, things would fall into place." She looked around the room. But silence can also be a form of self-erasure. "I learned that the hard way. I learned that not everyone will cheer for you when you shine. Some will try to dim you just to feel brighter. And for a long time I let that happen, because I believed that being kind meant being quiet." A pause. Then she smiled softly. "But I know now that kindness and strength are not opposites. You can speak up without being cruel. You can protect your worth without destroying someone else. And you can rise, not by pushing others down, but by standing firm in who you are." The applause was thunderous. And yet, it wasn't the sound that stayed with her. It was the energy, the shift, the unspoken connection between herself and others who had also felt invisible, overlooked, or underestimated. She was no longer forgotten. She was unforgettable. But perhaps the most unexpected moment came a month later. Elena received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a folded note and a small, pressed flower. She opened it slowly. "I know I don't deserve your time, but I wanted you to know that watching you grow from the shadows of what I took has shown me a kind of grace I didn't think existed in this world. I am sorry for everything I did to you, and I hope someday you will use your story to heal others the way it healed me. I won't disturb your peace again, but I will never forget it. R." Elena placed the note down and closed her eyes. There it was, the unexpected. Not vengeance. Not public justice. Not even closure in the traditional sense. But acknowledgement. A whisper of redemption from someone who had stolen her spotlight, but ended up giving her the stage to rise above it. That night, Elena stood by her window, looking out at the quiet city lights. She didn't need revenge. She didn't need applause. She had something better: her voice, her integrity, and her truth. The world may have forgotten her once.
But now?
Now, she had remembered herself. And that was the only recognition that truly mattered. Elena's story is not just about betrayal. It's not just about stolen ideas or broken trust. It's about what happens after. After the silence. After the fall. After the moment you realize someone took your place and the world clapped for them. But here's the truth no one tells you. You don't lose your value just because someone else is standing where you should have been. Your light doesn't stop shining because someone else tried to block it. Your voice isn't erased just because others chose not to listen. And your journey isn't over just because someone tried to write the ending for you. Elena could have disappeared. She could have walked away, angry and heartbroken, and no one would have blamed her. But she chose something harder.
She chose to stay.
To hold her ground. To reclaim her space, not with fire or fury, but with quiet power and unwavering truth. And in doing so, she discovered something extraordinary. That sometimes the unexpected thing isn't the betrayal itself. It's the breakthrough that comes from surviving it. To anyone listening right now who's ever been overshadowed, silenced, dismissed, or forgotten, this is for you. You are not invisible. You are not behind. You are not replaceable. And even if the world forgets you for a moment, your purpose does not forget you. Your calling still knows your name. So the next time you feel like someone took your place, remember, they can never take your truth. And truth always finds its way back into the light. Maybe today, you've been quiet too long. Maybe today, you've been waiting for the recognition that never came. But what if today isn't about being seen by others? What if today is the day you see yourself again? And in doing so, finally realize, you were never truly forgotten. You were just being prepared for a moment that only you could fill. And that moment? It's here now.